businesses and specific questions that you have. So I think that's great. Today's topic is all around kind of optimization and conversion when it comes to marketing. And I know marketing is one of those topics that we could probably talk about for days on end. So I think we'll touch on bits and pieces of everything as it relates to, your marketing plan and things that you do to obviously market your product or service. So having said that, Michael, can you hear me?
I can. Hello.
Hello. How are you?
I'm doing great. How about you?
Good, good. So I think we may have a smaller group today, which I was saying is great. And I really do encourage everybody to please, jump in and don't be shy about asking questions, especially because of the smaller groups, just gives us that much more opportunity to dive into your stuff. Michael, so as I was mentioning, today's topic is about kind of conversion optimization, right?
Yep.
But I was saying, obviously, marketing has so many bits and pieces to it. And I think when it comes for entrepreneurs, we can probably take them through a whole journey of like, how do you think about marketing? What do you think about, what to do, what not to do? But
Yep.
I want to take you back a little bit, when you were building your business, and obviously it's an industry that didn't exist, how did you approach marketing back then? And you didn't even have the tools that we have now.
Well, yeah. And I think, certainly going back into, a pretty long time ago with my healthcare business, but even, more recently with obviously Lonely Entrepreneur, the world has changed a lot. And, I'll give you an example. The average tenure of the head of marketing for the Fortune 500, right? Anybody want to guess what the average number of years that the head of marketing for a Fortune 500 hangs around these days? Any guesses? Any wagers?
Oh, these days?
Yeah.
2 years.
Almost exactly right. 1.8.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So it's
Yeah.
amazing, right? And it's not that there is any lack of talent in heads of marketing. It's just that it's really hard. It's incredibly competitive, incredibly cluttered. And, if you go back a bunch of years, the traditional tools that were used, whether it's B2B or B2C, are largely gone, right? And, if you think about in the old days, you went to a trade show, right? And I'm not even talking about COVID, right? You went to a trade show and you interacted with a B2B buyer. And, that was one of the ways, not the only way. Now, if you look at the data on B2B buyers, they do 95% of their research and they never want to talk to anybody, right? They just want to figure it out on their own and then get down to it. So the reality is this is really, really hard. This is a really, really difficult thing to do in order to stand out amongst the crowd, if you will. I'll go back to something that we talk about all the time, which is if everybody uses the same tools, social media, digital advertising, why does somebody win, right? Why does somebody have the ability to ultimately acquire, right, a customer, whether it's a B2B customer or a B2C customer? And I think that there's, back in the old days, you had the ability to, and I think some of these techniques I'm going to talk about in a little bit actually apply today, but you had much more depth of interaction back in the day. So you had the ability to plant a seed in someone's head that made them understand what the value is to them. And, rewarding people for being healthy as a concept and positioning and all that stuff really helped us. But a lot of what we did back in the day was, we made a lot of our market trade shows. We would go where health plans sat and have the opportunity. You just don't have that opportunity today.
Right.
And so the world has really changed significantly, which means that some of the things that you do are so incredibly important to make you stand out, which I'm going to talk about. The other thing I want to mention is just to talk about, digital marketing agencies and digital marketing professionals. I think this is an incredibly difficult job in this day and age. And I do not think it's a coincidence why leaders from large companies turn over a lot, because I think it's an incredibly difficult thing to do with all of the competition that is ultimately out there, and all the tools and technologies that are there. That being said, there are, I think, two pieces of this that are incredibly important. And I'll share those two pieces in a minute, but a lot of times when you talk to a digital marketing, let's say it's an agency, what an agency will say when you ask them, okay, I have a pizza business, I have a B2B software business, I have, name your poison. And you say to them, well, what expertise that you're going to bring are going to cut through that and the noise in the world that we live in? Or what's the key to success? Or however you would decide somebody talking to you, that somebody talking to you really has the gravitas to do what they're doing. I would say probably 9 times out of 10, the answer is we're going to test. Now think about that. Imagine if you hired a plumber and you said, well, how are you going to fix my house? And they're like, we'll see what works. Right. And if you, for those of you who have interviewed digital marketing agencies, and I have nothing against digital marketing agencies, I think it's legitimately hard, but in what profession would you be able to come to the table and say, we're going to test stuff? Right. No, the people that you hire in the disciplines, whether they are lawyers or, or accountants or design, like it's not, they're supposed to know, right? They're supposed to have and this is what shows you just how difficult it is, right? And a lot of times what people will say is, well, there's all this stuff you have to do. You have to do PPC, you have to do Google ads, you have to do SEO, you have to do, right? You have to optimize your website, you have to do content, 100%. Okay. And all those things do take time and effort to do it. But at the end of the day, experienced professionals should be able to come out of it and say, yeah, we got to do that stuff, but here's what wins. And I can tell you that 1 out of 10 that you interview will say, I think you should do this, or I think you should do that. Yeah, we got to do all this stuff, right? But it just goes to show you that when 9 out of 10 people are coming to the table and saying, we're going to see what works, isn't the idea that the reason you're hiring them is because they know what works. So lesson, it's hard. So you say to yourself, okay, what is the rub, right? If we all use the tools that I mentioned, SEO, social, some form of digital advertising spend, whether it's Google ads or social ads or some other platforms like Bing and Amazon, whatever it may be, why does something win or not win? I don't know about you, but I think if you go back a couple of years ago, you started to see ads that would say, I'm going to make you skinny, I'm going to make you $1 million, like all of this stuff that would just promise the world. And I don't know how many times you guys have seen those ads that say, all you have to do is sign up for this X and X and I'll increase your revenue by 300%. Well, how could you know anything about my business to know whether I sell sneakers or widgets or pajamas, to know anything about it? So I think that understand the context of this being hard, understand that there are some fundamental building block pieces that you have to put in place. You have to have good SEO strategy. You have to have a good website. You have to chip away at these. And I don't mean to be nonchalant that those are things that require real time and effort and expertise. But then there's the but, right? The but is that, okay, well, good. I have a good experience. That's important. But why? Why does somebody pay attention, right? I can always get something for free. I can always get it cheaper, right? And that's where it comes down to, this fundamental of operations that I just mentioned, all those pieces which you have to put in place to make it work well, which is easier said than done. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of pieces of that. But then you go right back to the lonely entrepreneur broken record, which is, how do I find this playground where nobody else is playing? How do I really stand out in a way where amongst all this clutter that we see, right? Because we have the sense that the only people we're competing with is competition. That's not true. We're competing with all the noise that we see across our daily lives. So what makes you stand out, right? I think a bunch of years ago, maybe what made you stand out is somebody just saying to you, click here and pay this and you'll get, these amazing results. And don't get me wrong, I guess sometimes that works. It wouldn't work on me. I suspect a lot of people here, it wouldn't work on you. So you say to yourself, okay, how do I define it in a way that somebody goes, okay, yeah, like that's something I want to learn more about. Okay. And we've talked about some of these concepts before. And part of it is finding a playground where nobody else is playing, right? I know the first time I heard the word lonely entrepreneur, the reason why we started the whole business is I went, whoa, yeah, and it made me pay attention, right? And create the reason why we're here. And so when you think about the things that are ultimately compelling to people, right? Part of it is finding a playground where nobody else is playing, right? And we've talked about some of these things. We're going to be the only one that does this. And the way you define this is smaller. Because remember, we're all putting these into ads. We're all putting these into the digital marketing tools, PPC, Google AdWords, social sites, websites, right? Why is it that somebody pays attention? Right. And yeah, we're going to test different versions of this, right? But what is it that you're laying down where people are going to go, oh yeah, right? And some of it is your playground, right? Where you're really looking for you to be the only game in town based on the way you define it, right? You want to be able to say, we're the only one doing X. It's just, it takes a lot of creativity to find the X, right? In my old company, we were the only one rewarding people for being healthy. There are a lot of people rewarding people for all other kinds of stuff. Now it's harder, right? Because there's lots and lots and lots of companies that get started every day with money and financing and all that fun stuff, right? So you got to try to find that niche where it's just you, where you're defining yourself completely differently. And we've spent a good amount of time on that. The other part of it is bringing a unique, we talk about, like, digital marketers will talk about adding value. Like, you want to add value. Well, I don't know about you. I get offered value 100 times a day. I'll give you a free this. I'll give you a free this. I'll give you a free this just for whatever. And okay, that's fine. And some of those things make a difference, but okay, I'll give you a report on this for free. Like, some of that is additive, but isn't it largely the same in many ways, right? Are we looking for are we all out there looking for the download? You're like, I woke up this morning and I didn't realize I needed this other download. It's not that you're offering something of value. It's you're offering some know-how or insight about what somebody's interested in, where somebody goes, oh, that's different, right? What is I use the analogy all the time that if any of us went outside where we live and went to go for a run, we know when we make a right, there's a pothole right there, right? So it's the ability to identify in your digital marketing insight or know-how that makes the buyer go, I didn't know that. I don't see that in other digital marketing that I see. And that is going to have some impact on what I'm trying to accomplish, whether it's dress for an event, right? Sell a piece of software. Like, it is the ability to tap into that unique know-how and insight that makes you occupy a different place in brain. Because you can't, I shouldn't say you, none of us can win by lining up this compared to this. Because I don't know about you, but I'm not doing it that all day long. I'm not comparing solution 1 to solution 2, right? It's, am I bringing some other type of insight to the table, right? About a consumer product, right? Or about a business to business solution that makes me think about that brand and ultimately that product as something that goes, they have something that really adds value to me. Okay. And that every one of us in our own unique businesses have some of this, right? We wouldn't be doing some business, something unique rather, if we didn't have some of this unique know-how, because that's what we don't think of it because it's just second nature to us, but that's what plays into why what we all feel like we're doing is unique. So the fight becomes not, okay, the nuts and bolts of social and nuts and bolts of SEO. Yes, of course you have to do all those things. Those are, you're building your car, right? But the question is, why is somebody want to get in your car and drive it, right? So you have to do these two things together. You have to bring to table this playground or this know-how, right? At the same time that you've built a car that gives you the functional pieces to get you from point A to point B. But I can tell you, certainly if you don't build a car, if you just have the insight, but it's not translating into a good experience, or like, of course, you're going to struggle with that. But on the other hand, you could have the perfect car, right? And if you're not bringing some type of value to the table in the clutter of the world that we live in, that is going to stand out in their mind, so that a day, a week, an hour later, right, or when they click, you're ultimately going to occupy a different place in their head. It's incredibly difficult to break through. Think about, and I'll mention Facebook, but it could be any of the platforms. What a digital marketer will tell you is that with Facebook, you're going to get 1% click through. Like 1% is success. Now think about that. 1% is success when the tools that are available through the social platforms like Facebook are incredibly targeted. I can pick purple people in Iowa that make $10,000 that bought, like I can target down, not 100%, but 75% of the way to my exact audience. And I'm still only getting one. If I get 1%, I've won. Right? So that tells you that the clutter and the noise of everything that we do, right, has to be superseded by something that makes them really go, wow, that was really insightful, right? They've put something in front of me in their digital advertising, either B2B or B2C, that is insightful or different, and makes me not just different. This idea of different is not enough. It's got to be insightful. It's got to bring value where you go, oh yeah, right? I did not know that. And that's something I really need to think about, right? One of the techniques that's used all the time is risk, right? People market to risk. They're like, if you don't do this, this happens to you, right? And that works, right? Because people become compelled by going, oh, I didn't know that if I didn't do that, right, that I would face this, and people become compelled to cut through all the noise. Okay. I'm going to go into some of the nuts and bolts of the digital marketing side, but for anybody else, let me stop there, see if there's any questions, see if people have had similar experiences when speaking to digital marketing agencies and the like. I'm happy to comment on it.
Yep, that's great. And folks, feel free to jump in or comment or ask any questions, because we want to make this interactive. Oh my God, I have a comment. I just, listening to this, I'm just fascinated, right? Because in a world of, as you say, so much clutter, right? And in a day and age where technology is so prevalent, right? We have all these tools. It's almost like technology is hindering our ability, right, to get in front of people. And it's almost becomes like this catch-22. The more technology, the more tools you have, the more cluttered it becomes, right? Because like you said, everybody's doing the same thing. So it's like everybody is in the same race.
Yep. And there aren't marketplaces that are devoid of players, right? Any meaningful marketplace, there's players. I think about now how smart the ad technology is when you go onto all these different platforms, which you never clicked the button and said, I'm from this region or I have this much. Like, it just, people are serving up stuff that's incredibly relevant to you, right? Because of whatever. Before it was, the baby version was, I bought this book on Amazon and therefore I'd be interested in this book, right? I mean, that was the 10 year version. And now, right, we may not admit it, but Victoria, whatever you bought at the supermarket yesterday, Facebook knows. And
wait, I'll up you one. Forget about actually buying. So I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I recently noticed that when I'm scrolling, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is, if I stop scrolling or if I pause on a certain ad, I don't even have to click on it. literally 5 minutes later, if or half an hour later, if I log back in, I'm served up these ads that are very similar to what I maybe even unintentionally paused on.
Yep.
I didn't even have to click, and I'm like, oh my God, they're literally tracking my movement.
Yep. And what I would say is this, and it's to your comments, V, what I would say is that highly targeted ads tied to the things that you really care about is one of the reasons why, TikTok has been so successful, because it looks at what you look at and it's able to really, in an intelligent way, serve up exactly what you're interested in. So that's actually an evolution that's awesome. Only show me the things that I'm the most interested in. Here's the catch. We get so much of that, we're not even paying attention to that. Right? If in your life you just got what you were interested, if you were driving to the supermarket and on the screen of your car, you compared the prices of toilet paper because that's what you're going to go buy. Awesome. But we get so much of it, right, in our day-to-day lives that even the stuff that's most relevant, we stop paying attention. I mean, there could be an ad for a free $1 million on a website and everybody here would scroll through it. So I think your point is really well taken, V. Even though the targeting is so intensely personalized and will continue to do that more and more and more, we've just been out like, I'm out of the business.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even paying attention to all of this, right?
Yeah, unless it's another pair of black shoes.
Well, right, exactly. And so you say to yourself, okay, so what you're saying, Michael, is that we're going to all spend all of this time and money to optimize our funnel, right? Our paid ads, our social, our website, our search engine optimization. And you just need that just to get on the ride. But when you get on the ride, right, if you get 1% of the people to look at your stuff, you're lucky. And if you get some small percentage of that to actually do something,
Mm-hmm.
you're lucky. You're like, well, that's a bad deal.
Right.
Like that doesn't say. So you say to yourself, okay, digital advertising gives me scale. It gives me the ability to target a demographic. Great. I can't do that through, relationships. Like I can do that at scale. I can press. So in some senses, it gives you all the foundations to be able to do it at scale and to learn, right? And to try this ad and try that. But what I would say to you is it's the strategy that wins, right? It's the differentiating strategy that wins. Like, so I think sometimes with digital advertising, it's like people forget strategy. Like they go, so a couple of years ago, Pantene, the shampoo, won the top advertising campaign of the year. And that campaign was a partnership with SoulCycle about women's empowerment. Now, you say to yourself, what does shampoo have to do with women's empowerment?
Well, if your hair is great, you just feel great.
I guess, right? But what they're doing is they're creating a strategy that is different from shampoo, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's something that's tapping into something else, right? So for example, if I wanted to sell you pizza, I could do pizza stuff, right? And as you know, for any of you that have interacted with pizza brands, they spend hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars just to get on the ride, right? Just to be in the game, right? Not differentiating, but you see them all day long, right?
Okay.
Just to maintain, right? If I were wanted to sell you pizza, I might say, okay, what do consumers really care about, right? They care about their pets. They care about the struggle of being an entrepreneur and their entrepreneurial ventures. They care about their football team, right? Things that people care about, things that make people go, yeah, right? So if you showed pizza with my dog, which is in some ways pretty fun, in some ways disturbing, right? You would go, oh, I care about my dog. That's cute. Let me click on that. Right? So it's the strategy that wins, right? Like, obviously, we always feel honored when people take time out of their day to come talk to us. But if this was, Michael and Victoria's Guide to Entrepreneurism, would you be here? right? We like to think that the lonely entrepreneur represents a spirit that we all go through, and we're like-minded, and we have to battle through these struggles together and get better at it. And we hopefully think you're here because you understand that we think we get it, and we've been you in the past. So the strategy is always what makes you cut through. And rarely are we paying attention to the difference between A and B. So when you think about strategy, think about Pantene, right? It has nothing to do with shampoo. Now, smart people go, well, everybody's saying shampoo stuff. How can you talk about your product or service through digital marketing? Like, who doesn't have testimonials, right? Fill in the blank. This thing is great. Who doesn't have that?
Right.
You might even win by having a testimony that says this is the worst product in the world. People might pay more attention to that. Right? We were talking to some people the other day in our session about raising money, and we're like, well, what about being passionate about your product? And I was like, who's not passionate about your product? What person raising money is not passionate about their product? Actually, if you weren't passionate, that might stand out more. Right? So you have to think about the strategy about how your content is being served up on top of this engine that has to be built. What is the strategy? What is the approach? What is the feeling that you're giving people? I'll give you another one that I think is important, but getting to be commoditized, and that is social mission. Let me ask you a question. Do you know any brand on the planet that doesn't express its social mission?
Right.
Now, many of them are doing it in earnest, of course. Many, Fortune, whatever companies are spending millions and millions of dollars on driving these important social missions. So I don't mean in any way to denigrate the work, but is that differentiating anymore? I mean, for the ones that were doing it for 20 years when it wasn't in vogue, like the Ben and Jerry's of the world, absolutely it is, because they were doing it before it was sexy. But now, doesn't everybody have a social mission? Or put differently, could you even get on the ride if you didn't have a social mission? So the point is that it's not that there's a social mission, it's that what are we doing with that social mission? Right? If I believe in voting rights, and I have and I believe that's something that my demographic, right, believes in, well, then the social mission that I might go down, the path I might go down, is creating relationship with those that align to that, because that makes me strategically stand out. Right? So, and again, that doesn't have anything to do with pizza. Right? It has to do with what is the strategy that makes you actually stand out in this hyper cluttered world.
Yeah, it just goes back to this notion of kind of the entrepreneurial creativity that we're always talking about, right? And the more and more, the technology and just, business in general grows, the more we have to tap into this creativity across all the business areas.
Yeah, and like I'll give you an example. Sometimes people will say about lonely entrepreneur, well, but hold on a sec. I know you have 500 learning modules, and you have like these coaching calls, and you have a community where all of our stuff in our learning community, and they're like, well, all of this stuff is like, not all of it, but like I can get some of this stuff for free. And you're like, you can. So if I need to try to figure out whether to form an LLC or a C Corp, I could type that up right now and you could go find it. So you say to yourself, okay, well, how do you strategically position that? So we would say something like, all of that stuff is free. Has becoming an entrepreneur gotten easier?
Or trying to figure out whether you actually should do an LLC or an S Corp.
So has it gotten easier? There's all this free stuff. Has it gotten easier to be an entrepreneur? Because we have this universe of technology. I can type it. Has it gotten easier? Right. So the point is, you have to tap into a different way of positioning your product and service that, don't get me wrong, has to come through in the words you write, in the when I say strategy, it's the way the strategy gets actualized. It's the ad you put there, the words you write in your copy, the video you use, right? That Now, and this is what digital marketing agencies should be coming to us and saying. Digital marketing agencies should be coming to us and saying, this is what your ad should say, right? There's 1 million people doing blank, name it, pizza. This is what your ad should say, right? Because here are the things, and what that takes is the real creativity, right? Having a pet with a slice of pizza in their mouth, right? Might not work, but it's certainly different.
Right.
Okay. And these themes, right, are themes that stick in people's heads, right? So when you're offered products and services and you're doing digital marketing, you're establishing your brand in such a way that they, I don't want to say stand for something else, because I'm not talking about really brand essence. I'm just talking the way somebody looks at your organization a little differently than how they look at other organizations.
Right.
Okay. Think of all of us on the ends of digital advertising from banks, right? And banks will say, we really get the small business customer, and we have all the best banking products and services for you. Right? Does anybody here respond to that?
Probably not.
Right? So the point is that, and again, these banks aren't us. They have resources and money and marketers and teams, and they go, now, if a bank said, and again, you've heard me say this before, so sorry for bringing a broken record. If banks said, anybody that asks you if you're working on Columbus Day isn't an entrepreneur, then you might go, oh, this bank understands me. And what do they sell? Oh, they sell banking products. Right? So
Right.
I know sometimes that we are all in early stage companies. There's always I got to do SEO, I got to do social, and it's a lot, and I don't have the resource. 100%. Building the car is a legitimately hard thing. Okay. But if you build the car and you don't have this positioning strategy down, right, you can build all the cars you want, right? And even if it's a perfect flow, right? If that strategy doesn't come through, if that way of people going kind of about you doesn't come through, it's very difficult to cut through. Don't get me wrong, you'll hire digital advertising agencies that will learn some of this. They'll say, we're going to try ad 1, ad 2, ad 3, right? And see which one works better. And that's good. And you need all that. But as we all know, right, those are all within that 1% range. Right? People are like, we really kicked ass today. This ad responded 1.2%. Now, if 1.2% gets you enough revenue that you can put more money into it, 100%. But a lot of times what we miss is, what is the approach? What is the positioning? Could be the know-how, could be the market, like all the things I've been kind of rattling off, where somebody goes, oh, that really makes a difference.
Yeah, no, that's great. Michael, what are some of the KPIs that entrepreneurs, small business owners should keep an eye on when it comes to, this kind of optimization and conversion thing?
Yeah, I think they're pretty traditional, V. I think the first is your conversion metrics, right? Which is if you're running, paid campaigns, you're looking at audience reach, click-throughs, right? Responses to calls to action, and then ultimately the action that you want them to take, which might be buy something, get a free trial, right? Those are the fundamentals.
And
then
probably throwing in the website in there, right?
Well, then there's the supporting those goals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which the main goal is, okay, revenue, right? And when I have that revenue, it's like, okay, I've sent out ads, I get this many click-throughs, I get this many people to take a call to action. Those are the 101 basics. Supportive of that are other things like website traffic, organic traffic, certainly your search engine optimization. But you should always be optimizing your calls to action across all of the content you put out there. So if you're putting something on your website, if you're putting something out in a blog, if you're putting something out in a press release, and certainly if you're putting things out in paid ads, your discipline around your calls to action should be really rigorous. I want them to do this, right? And then you're measuring that. But I was just struck, years ago, V, when you first start, this is probably, I don't know, 10 years ago, when you first started to have real digital marketing agents, so they would come to the table and say, yep, we're going to get 1% and we're going to test. And I was like, what? Like, that's why we hire you, to get 1%. It's like your daughter coming home and saying, how'd you do in school? You're like, I got a D. You're like, awesome. You didn't get an E. Right. So I think that what's incumbent on us, on leaders, is to challenge ourselves and the partners and vendors that we use to really think about what are the things that are ultimately compelling to people. And more, it requires, the creativity around thinking a little bit outside of just the, as we like to say, sprinkles on the ice cream cone that frankly, everybody else would do. Right. Some of those techniques can relate to risk. Some of those techniques can relate to aspiration, right? There's no question that there's ways to message that really kind of stand out with respect to people. But what I can tell you this, and again, don't take my word for it. Think about yourself as consumers. What gets you to pay attention? Is it, look at this product versus that product? Look at this set of features versus that set of features? Rarely. Right? And so when you think about what's going to actually make a difference to a consumer or a business buyer, you really have to challenge yourself and your teams and people that are helping you, your advisors, to say, how do we find this playground? How do we show unique know-how? Right? Like, if you send out an ad as a vet and you said, here's our vet services. Okay, great. If you said an ad as a vet and you said, whatever you don't do this on Thursday with your dog, you'd be like, oh, let me click on that. Right? So building the car is one thing, right? And certainly critical, but the other part of it is no question to have a strategy and a position that make it really stand out from the crowd.
Yeah, these are great insights. Does anybody have any questions or comments when it comes to marketing?
Hi, I just want to say that the targeted ads on Facebook get me every time, because what'll happen is I'll stop on something that I would normally never care about. It just got my attention. And then I spend the next 3.5 weeks getting targeted ads about the thing that I don't care about. So right now I'm getting ads for vinyl flooring.
Yeah.
I don't own a
You never know when you may need those.
I'm vinyl flooring and pools, because I clicked on home renovation project videos about vinyl flooring and pools.
Right. So that, right, Shanna, that creates a perception in your head, like, I'm never going to look at one of these again.
Right. Never. Like, I see them now on my timeline. I'm like,
you could be bleeding. You could be like, I just got shot and I need a tourniquet, and you wouldn't even respond to the tourniquet ad. Right. Everybody is so tuned out to it that, don't get me wrong, it works in certain circumstances, but it's becoming less and less and less effective at cutting through the clutter to do it. So it's like, well, why does somebody win? Right. And it goes back to this, this stuff here. That's a lot of the positioning stuff that we're talking about here. That's why, we've said before, positioning is more important than product. Right. We've used the Nike example before, that most runners believe that Nike running sneakers are far deficient to other running brands like Asics and Saucony, and yet Nike just sells 10 times more and said, just do it. I'm pretty sure the people that run Asics or wear Asics want to just do it too. But right, they had a shoe that was in the objective view of most runners is better, right? And this is not something you don't feel. This is not a dress you put in your closet that you don't wear. This is sneakers you feel on your feet every day. And yet the positioning of it towards, why did they say that? They're like, okay, are we going to win on the best shoe? well, we might just spend more money, but we're going to win more because of the nature of the brand and that. And so what makes us do it with Nike now, granted, it was tons of advertising, right? But the brilliance of that is that there's an aspirational element to it versus a functional element of it to ASIC. So what appeals to people more? So it's about that positioning, right? And how that comes through in your digital advertising. Okay.
Yep.
Hard to find. Not so easy to do. Let me talk a little bit about function of the kind of digital marketing continuum. I think that when it comes to the paid world, right, you have your Google ad search, where, one of the techniques you're looking for there is, when people are searching for terms, right, you are either ranking because of your search engine optimization, or you're placing ads, right? And what you're really trying to do, especially as an earlier stage company, is you're trying to thread that needle. Like, you're not going to be able to put an ad up there that when somebody searches for pizza, because there's too many people fighting for that. It's too expensive. There's no way for you to get right on the first page of Google. What you're looking for is the mix between search terms that aren't so cluttered, right? But yet there's enough volume that it's worth your advertising spending, right? So if we go and type pizza for dogs, right? I'll do it right now. I doubt there's going to be that many people searching for pizza for dogs, right? So now, if it's only 10
Did we
people,
just come up with a new business idea?
there you go, right? So for example, interesting, Giordano's, national chain, how to make puppy-friendly pizza. Okay, but the point is that if we looked at Google search and we said, how many people search pizza for dogs, there's probably not that many people searching. So the less people that are searching, the less you get out of it. The more people are searching, the harder, the more competitive it is. So what you're looking to do is thread the needle in the middle on your search engine optimization. Sometimes this is called long tail keywords, right? Where you're not using, pizza, which is one word, using multiple words that allow you to say, okay, I want a certain amount of search volume, right, to be able to put my ads in front of. Remember, a lot of the ad platforms, it's all pay for click. So you don't pay until people click, but you're looking for meaningful search volume. So part of your again, focusing on Google is, are you targeting the right words with both ads and your SEO strategy, where places that you can meaningfully win? You're not going to win the first page of pizza, right? And your ad spend for the first page of pizza is going to be extremely expensive.
I bet you if you do pizza that makes you skinny, you would get on the first page.
I'm sure there's 50,000 people a day that are searching for that, right? So that's your kind of your Google ad search. And then you go into your social platforms, right? Your social platforms like Facebook, to a certain extent, Instagram, to a growing extent, LinkedIn, allow you, as well as others, YouTube and Bing and others, allow you to execute ads with a high degree of targeting, right? You get to pick your audiences that have a lot of criteria you can pick. And to use technology like retargeting, like what happened to Victoria, right? When somebody sees what you're doing, they're cooking you and grabbing you as you go. So this is really a science, right? It's people that do this full time, and even when they do it full time, 1% is a win, right? So it requires kind of a constant focus on, is the audience right? Is the message right? Right? Is the car right? Of course, right? In such a way that it's compelling. And these are expertise. Do some people do it themselves? They do. But it really is a capability that people spend lots and lots of times trying to get good at. I think that with respect to social, right? Social form, not the social advertising that I'm talking about, because the social advertising you're talking about in a lot of ways is meant to be acquisition. If you're doing, Instagram ads, you're trying to get people to convert, right? You're trying to get people to activate and to buy your product or service or whatever it may be. But social also becomes kind of your face, right? So a lot of times when you are putting your social out there, you're trying to portray that, again, that strategic brand image, right? That sets you apart, so that when somebody doesn't buy right away, but they say, oh, that's interesting, and I go look, the look you're putting up there reinforces your differentiator, right? And reinforces what you want them to walk away from, which is, oh, this company is different. Okay. And, you know, the other component of this is email marketing, right? Which is obviously people interact, they show up on websites, they sign up for mailing lists, and then you give them email. And again, it's a challenge, right? It's a challenge to cut through. I don't know about you, but I rarely, if ever, read an email that isn't coming from something I'm already predisposed to. I'm no different than I think most people. And in your email messaging, you have to, again, what is the positioning? What is the risk? What is the unique insight, right? That's going to make me go, right, Victoria, you're kidding around about black shoes. If somebody did an ad that said, if you've bought these black shoes, they're awesome, but don't ever wear them with blank, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Right? Do you know what the blank is?
No.
Right, but that's the point. You're like, oh, what is it? Like, oh, I didn't know that. I just spent X on these shoes, and I'm not supposed to wear it with blank, but I don't know what that is.
Right.
Right. So again, I'm like, it's silly the way I'm describing it, but I think everybody understands the point is that the messaging and the theme and the strategy of who you are across these channels has to come through. And while you're testing your ads, you're testing them in such a way where you might be tinkering with little bits and pieces. So for example, you could say, here's how to write an investor deck, right? We've seen those ads, right? But what if somebody says, you know, the first time an investor says to you that they don't like your business, it's like calling your baby ugly. Or, you know, raising money is like landing on another planet. Like there's a different language. Like you would go, now remember, the thing you might get is an investor deck or help with an investor deck, but you're tapping into something different and a different way of positioning it where people now pay attention, and certainly pay attention more than feature or function or whatever it may be. So I don't mean to diminish the car and how important the car is. You know, you need to be able to have discipline around SEO, your website, the user experience, your calls to action, right? These need to be top of mind things. Do I have the right calls of action? The places I'm sending people, website, videos, do I have clear calls to action, what I want them to do? Right? Because without clear calls to action, right, you can send them and you can spend money and you can spend time getting them from point A to point B. But in a cluttered world, you want them to go do this.
Yeah, it's exactly the comment that Chris made. The great messaging, but poor site layout and clear CTA can be very unsuccessful, and it's true.
Yeah, listen, this is one of the hard parts about it is, you know, I'm describing building this car, and I'm sure everybody on the call is going, yeah, Michael, that's hard. It is. It's a variety of different disciplines. They don't talk to each other naturally well. They need, you know, marketing, either an agency or multiple marketing people that can come together and piece that all together. And you've got to be able to do that just so you can have a car to figure out how to drive it. So it is a very, very difficult thing to do. And unfortunately, if any piece of that chain falls down, you can be unsuccessful. If you do a good job in your ad, but your social doesn't reflect it, right? And somebody goes and checks out your social, right? If you do a good job in your social, but your website doesn't have a clear call to action, like there's all of these things in the chain that have to be done effectively. And if they're not done effectively, if any one of them not done effectively, it becomes very difficult to to get people down the path of a path they weren't maybe looking to do until, I shouldn't say that, many times they are looking to do it, and that's why you target them. But
But the process breaks down.
Yeah, exactly, right. Any friction along the way, right, really makes it very difficult to cut through, and takes that 1% to 0.5% pretty quickly.
Right. So for Convergence to be successful, you have to have these, all these things kind of aligned, right, and working together.
Yeah. And then, when you do that, you've got to really challenge yourself to say, what are the messages that really make a difference?
Right.
Not just the cliche, we're inexpensive, our clients love us, I had a great experience, right? Like, that's what we hear all day long.
Yep, definitely. No, this has been great. And listen, marketing, like I said, is one of the things that, that we find entrepreneurs, business owners always struggling with, because as we said, with technology, right, with new tools coming out all the time, with new algorithms changing, and just, dealing with the cluttered world, we as business owners and marketers have to keep pushing, keep pushing kind of the, our barriers, and try to break through, and obviously creativity, and really thinking deeper on, what the customer is going to be interested in.
Yeah, listen, I think that when you get a winning formula, especially with your digital advertising, you just look to pump more dollars in it because it's giving you a return on investment. But that's incredibly hard. The other thing I'd leave people with is that when you do go and hire digital marketing agencies, whether it's an independent consultant or it's an agency, you should ask them specifically to tie their compensation to results, right? You should say, you've said you can do X, awesome. 50% of your compensation or some portion of your compensation should be tied to that X. And if people believe in their abilities and have the talents they say they have, they would be really ready, willing, and able to do that, just because they'll make more money than they would have otherwise. Because if they deliver the results, they'll get it. If they're not, if they said, well, we don't do that, the answer to that question is, well, you've told me you do all this stuff. You told me you're results oriented, and yet I'm tying your compensation to the very results you've told me you're going to get, and yet you don't want to do that. Right? So that tells you a lot.
A little red flag to pay attention to.
Right.
There you go.
Most digital marketing
Right, well,
don't come to the table and say, we can't do this for you.
Right.
Shocking.
Yeah, this has been great. As always, thank you everybody for taking an hour out of your time. Hopefully this was insightful and you walk away with, a couple of new thoughts and things to think about. And as always, we're here. If you have any follow-up questions, please feel free to reach out. Looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.